Saying is that I'm happy to be among my extended family. We're all media professionals. We work in media and press. We work in content. We work in the commercial side. But ultimately, our jobs and our obligations is to share what we see, what we think, what we feel, what we observe, and figure out ways of connecting with our public, our readers, our audiences. So it is a matter of being part of creating a dialogue this morning, and I'm delighted to be opening up the forum. I want to thank the Eurasian Media Forum as well. I understand it's the 14th occasion, and I see that the forum is growing, it's gaining impact, it's growing, and it's there's never been a more important time, essential time for media professionals to be talking to each other, as this region actually gains and grows in impact, and its populations, which are young and ambitious and well-educated and want to participate in their economies and their societies, your communities, and in the world at large. I'm going to put down the mic for a second. The paper that I work for is the pink one that everyone identifies by its color. I don't have to introduce the FT. I'm not here to promote the FT, nor to promote myself. I'm here to promote some ideas, and the central idea is that creativity, I think creativity becomes the motor, the force for what we do together. I'm going to start off in a very unorthodox manner. I'm going to read a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, romantic English poet, called Love's Philosophy. Do I have any slides anyway? Oh yeah, I have my own slide flipper. Will this begin? Yeah. Let me just say. That's why I'm going to rely on words. So, Love's Philosophy. The fountains mingle with the river, and the rivers with the ocean. The winds of heaven mix forever with a sweet emotion. Nothing in the world is single, all things by a law divine. In one other's being mingle, why not I with thine? See the mountains kiss high heaven, and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother, and the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What is all this sweet work worth, if thou kiss not me? I'll repeat the last two lines. What is all this sweet work worth, if thou kiss not me? Me. And I was thinking, we're in a time of where the me, the self, is really it is. You're communicating with an audience one at a time, one person, one reader, one mother, one father, one daughter, one sister, one business person at a time. Media connects with one person at a time. What is the most universally recognized word in the world today? What do you think? The one single most recognized word in the world today. Information? No. It's selfie. Selfie. Where's my selfie? There's my selfie. How do I go back here? So there's my selfie with Bill Clinton at the Clinton Global Initiative, and it's interesting. Every word I checked I did Google searches. I checked in Wikipedia. Almost every language in the world, the translation for selfie is selfie. Let me go back. So I think we need to remember the individual. So what influences people today? What influences people today? Energy, passion, conviction, enthusiasm, persistence, determination, dynamism, power, charm, self-assurance, self-belief, value, opportunities, and profit. If you have these in media, you succeed. But without these alone, without values, without principles, without ethics, without moral direction, without clear cause, without the what and not just the how, we're a little bit lost. I use a little acronym, I call it VICE. Values, ideas, creativity, and enthusiasm. I'm going to talk mostly about creativity today because we can see that this is a region, this is a city, this is a country that has fantastic resources, has fantastic human resources, has fantastic talent, has human resources, has individuals that really care, have individuals that want to participate. And yet, you look at the media offerings in your countries, in our countries, in all countries, but especially in this region, and we see there's a gap, there's a deficit between what we are, what the impact of our media and what we're offering. Is it because there is no content? No, there's lots of content. Is it because there's no commerce? No, there's lots of commerce. But there's a gap between the two that we need to learn how to bridge. And the danger of having the lots of how and not enough what is we get confusion. We get what I see as the tail wagging the dog. I was just at the Go Viral festival in Almaty, and I was on a panel about creating commerce in media, and there was a presentation from the representative of YouTube, and he explained that there is, in this country, 33 billion tenge worth is the size of the media market, and we looked at the millions of hits and what's popular, and we saw that these young entrepreneurs, young media professionals who hope and desire to create their own things are looking at one model. They're looking at how do you get impact, how do I play into those brands, and how do I get that traffic? And it seemed like when the tail is wagging the dog and we forget who we want to be, what are our stories, what is our soul, what influence do we want to have in our societies, and we forget and we stop listening to our public, our communities, our young people. We are driven by the prestige of the brands and the numbers that we command, and we forget that there's so much fantastic content that is not being shared. So I think content is we talk about content, but content is the key, obviously, to generating visibility and connection and what we call engagement, as you all know. So content is also fantastically confusing today because we mix everything into one basket called content. Content is information. Content is news. Content is entertainment. It's advertising. It's opinion. It's fact. It's alternative facts. It's false news. It's news. It's analysis. It's biased reporting. It's investigative reporting, it's balanced coverage, it's advocacy, it's good journalism, it's bad journalism, it's excellent advertising, it's terrible advertising, it's sponsored content, it's curated content, it's text-driven messages, it's branded, sponsored material, it's influencers. All this is just one package when we talk about content. So we need to be asking ourselves, what content? What content? Some of it is journalism, and some of it is commerce, and some of it is in the foggy, shady line that keeps getting increasingly confused. But the reality, the hard reality, the real reality, and I've seen this as a creative person working for a big brand, that the dirty little secret in big media, but all media really, is that if you have a compelling subject that you care about, that you believe in, like the environment, or empowering women, or increasing consciousness about education, or improving the conditions in your community, etc. If you have that compelling idea, right, and you also have figured out who can sponsor this, whose interest is this to tell this story, and you secure the funding, the advertising, the sponsoring, the support, right? The journalists, the editors, the publishers will support this and back this. I'll give you one example. As a creative person, I started as a writer, as a fiction writer, novelist. I was publishing for 20 years a literary journal in Paris. I come from Boston, I moved to Paris, I started a literary journal, and I was trying to figure out, how do I survive as a literary publisher, publishing poetry, publishing fiction, translations, things that are hard to sell, things that are hard to support, art, right? So as a struggling cultural publisher, I figured out I had to be inventive, I had to be creative, I had to be unusual. And when I brought, when I started training journal publishers in Africa, 25 years ago, I saw that there was lots of great stories. There was lots of things happening in parts of the world that were not being covered. And I went to Mauritania. It was my first one of my first places. And I saw that the Financial Times has a series of reports, they used to call them supplements. Now, or surveys, now they call them reports. But they never covered countries that, like Mauritania or Mali or Guinea, or and rarely other countries that were either developing countries or frontier markets. And there were so many things of interest that were happening in these places. So I decided I was going to try to make a report on Mauritania, and I pitched this idea to the FT. This was a market they were not thinking about. They didn't care about. They didn't have anybody preparing special reports there. And I went around, and I knew that I needed to find the advertisers to get the journalists on board. So I saw that Air Mauritanie was up for privatization. I went to see their director. They didn't have a campaign. They had no international communications. They didn't even have a shareable logo. And I took out my laptop, put together an ad, and announced, Air Mauritanie announces the exciting first phase of privatization. I scanned with the logo. I designed it on the spot. And we ran it, and I got some 3 or 4 commitments, including one for a dairy for camel's milk, which in London they're still talking about that ad today. And the report came out. I brought in £63,000 from a country that had never advertised and which was never in the FT before. It came out on a Thursday. By Monday, Air Mauritanie had been contacted by a venture capitalist firm in Brussels that invested $23 million into the company. And I didn't know that the airline it didn't even own one plane. It rented one Fokker. And what was interesting were the routes. But this got me thinking. Companies need help. Projects need help. How to communicate, how to reach out, how to connect. And that was the beginning of my career with the FT. The FT was happy because they had somebody who was willing to go to difficult places and complicated places and figure out how to bring in new content for their readers. When times are difficult and And we all complain, we all hear, oh no, no one's spending, advertising revenues have dropped, nobody is interested, it's hard, times are hard, the price of oil is down. These are great times for creative people. The more difficult the economy, the better, the more opportunity there is for and need there is for creativity. So and we need more and better commerce to fuel good media. And the question is, which kind of commerce? We want to make sure that we create projects that help we defend and protect our citizens, our societies, our voters, our taxpayers, our students, with good information, with critical ability, and so that citizens become smarter and wiser and are able to participate in an improved, healthy, and sustainable future. That's my opinion. But we also know, I just got back from the Detroit, the Sustainable Brands Conference. We also know that around the world, people want the same thing. North America, Europe, Asia, we want the same things. And millennials want, especially, purpose over profit. You have to be showing that there are ways to participate in a world that makes sense, that has meaning, that has ethics, that improves the planet. So our common denominator for creating good and impactful, relevant media and press is our originality, our curiosity, our imagination, our courage, our discovery, our authenticity. And what our common enemy is, and then I'm going to show you some examples, and then I'd like to entertain some questions. Our common enemy as media professionals in the region and elsewhere is habit. It's timidity. It's laziness. It's complacency. It's cautiousness. It's hesitancy. It's fear. It's habit. I said that twice on purpose. It's self-restraint. It's risk aversion. It's tradition. Tradition is wonderful, but tradition holds us back. It is this reflex to repeat what we know and what we expect. These things hold back our creativity. Our fear of failure, especially in societies where failure is not, the opposite. Failure never has prestige, but we understand in some cultures, in some societies, we embrace failure. Samuel Beckett said, "Fail well." We know that if it takes 10 good ideas, 10 ideas for 2 of them to work, if you have 5, you'll get 1 idea that may work. If you have 3, you'll get 0. We also know from marketing, in international marketing experience, something called the 27 rule, which means this. It's very simple. It was actually taught to me by Jay Levinson, who was an advertising maverick and unfortunately created the success of Marlboro cigarettes. But the 27 rule goes like this. For every time that something passes by your eyes 9 times, you see it once. You have to see something 3 times before you act, before you respond, before you send an email, before you leave a comment, before you buy something. So if you're not in front of people a minimum of 27 times, you have no impact. Okay, let me, this may sound like preaching to the choir, but there is really, and because you're all media practitioners, and I'm not sure exactly what you all do and what your point of entry is into your own markets and your own publications, or your radio stations, or your websites, or your TV. and I'm not sure if you're in programming or if you're in sales. But the point here is that great content generates and creates it creates opportunity on the commercial side. I went to the Marrakesh, in Marrakesh, the COP22 last fall. I met the CEO and some of the directors of Conservation International. We were talking about how, and I got the idea in a discussion with them, why not introduce to the Financial Times a series of special reports on sustainability. So, but not just the large global concept of sustainability. Let's drill down into some commodities, into products, and into industries. So we had the idea, and now we're doing it. The first FT Sustainable Coffee Report. So we're working on coffee, but not just all coffee, sustainable coffee that's produced under sustainable, with the sustainable goals objectives, ones that have policies about labor, how to have good labor and increase education. That was one idea. I work every year in Nigeria, but the question is, and I like to show this example. When Nigeria turned 50, you can't go to CEOs and billionaires and say, advertise in my supplement. What do influential people want? They want to be covered. They want to be written about. The example I like to show is the creation of these columns, these vertical columns here, which we called Visionary Nigerian Business Leaders Who Are Making a Difference. They were texts that were, I guess you call sponsored texts now, but they were written by writers and journalists with these business leaders, and they were paid for. They're identified as paid for, but it was what subsidized a 24-page editorially driven report. Mike Adenuga, who started Glow, one of the cell phone companies, he said, okay, well, if there are other business leaders in the report, I want to be first. So we put him first. But then he said, if others are participating, I want two. So at $75,000 each, Mike Adenuga got two half-page vertical spaces. Now, I'm not proud of that as a solution, but it enabled our journalists to write a 24-page report about Nigeria. And every year we try to cover the investing in Nigeria, and we try to do investing in lots of other countries. We'd like to bring that to this region here as well. Okay. At that same conference, I heard a writer and a scientist and a thinker, a thought leader, Nadia, how do you pronounce that? Who's Kazakh, and she is an expert on oceans and fishing. I heard her speak. I saw she had a book on the subject. I saw that there's been articles about fishing. Who in this media environment has approached a thought leader like that to run a column about fishing, about the waterways, about connecting globally important issues with locally important topics? I haven't seen that in any of the press. So So the key here is how to link up content with commerce, how to come up with innovative new strategies for making content alive and making it viable. I think the key thing that I wanted to say is that ideas are hiding everywhere. Ideas are hiding everywhere. You go, you look around, you see, oh, I saw at my breakfast table this morning, honey made it's locally made, and who is doing, has anybody contacted that company? Has anybody done specials on locally made products? Has the person who started that company been contacted, and have you done profiles? I just look around for ideas everywhere, and I think they're hiding in everything. One of the problems I think we have is that our young media entrepreneurs sometimes aim for how to participate in existing trends as opposed to how to become that trend. What are the models? What are the obstacles? Why are we not inventing our own? And I think the key is good writing, good courage, and new thinking. So I'd like to hear a little bit. I have lots of examples of special reports that I've done, of publishing. I wanted to also talk a little bit about book publishing, because I think one of the great opportunities is to go to success stories, local leaders, thought leaders, people who are doing really interesting things, invite them to and help them write books, short books, share those books in print form, share those books in as ebooks, connect those with events, and I'm not seeing that coming out that much out of this region. I would like to hear some of your questions about the obstacles in your markets, about inserting, trying out, inventing, and using new ideas. So let's start there, and then that will probably bring me to some other place.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Shahid Qureshi. I'm the editor of the London Post and Media Group. As a journalist, the major issue we face is the laws, where editors feel more comfortable about stories which are easy to publish, and where they face any issue, there could be any litigation, any issue which is linked with they can have a counter to the business strategy, for example. So the ethics of media or freedom of speech take over the economy of the concerned news group, and that's where we struggle, because as a media person, we don't have we are just a one-man army. We don't even have a tank or any gun or anything. So all we have is a pen or a laptop. So with that small, very few resources, it's very difficult for us to fight or to expose or to even talk about any or negative or even neutral thing about the big organization or a big group. And that kind of a self-editing, as you mentioned, self-restraint, these are the issues, these are the challenges we face. You talked about a brilliant idea about visualness, about rule of 27, which is very interesting. And I think that has been used in selling various products, from anti-aging cream to plastic surgery to hair transplant, etc., by the medical companies for their profits. But that doesn't feel down to the media individuals. Thank you.
So the key to the question, thank you for that question, but the question is the reticence or a bit of intimidation about the question of laws. Yeah, and you're working out of, where are you based? You're based in London, yeah. Well, we do know that, and I think this is one of the question of law. I mean, I'm not going to go too deeply, and I know how it's interesting because I know many of the states, governments in the region apply or use a kind of a state-sponsored content, and then that creates a sense of dependency because so many of the media outlets rely on this as a source of revenue, and then there's also some ambiguity about what liberties can we take, and so we always err on the side of caution. Now, erring on the side of caution is not a healthy sensation or a healthy impulse for societies where we're free and independent and diverse and interesting media is growing. So I understand that. I think the key here is to create more internal dialogue. You know, I've worked in lots of countries where the independent media has been perceived as being an enemy, and it's not. It reinforces societies. I'm not going to even use the word. We don't need to talk about big concepts like, you know, democracy or. It's just about dialogue. We see in social media in Kazakhstan, for example, there's a absolutely vibrant degree of diverse discussion that's going on. That is in the social media, that is not in mainstream media. So we know that there's people who care, who think, who talk, who are active. So I think the dialogue, I think some of it has to start in social media. I think we need to reach out to our ministries of information to help explain. We have to make reforms and changes in steps. We have to show that, you know, I remember I was working in the country of Benin, Cotonou, and I took a walk one morning on the beach, and I saw 50 dead pigs on the beach, and there were kids playing with them, and they had died of la peste porcine. And so I was working with a newspaper there, and I went and got their journalists, and I said, you know, did you see this? They started to write an article that attacked the Ministry of Health, saying they're not doing anything. They didn't give them a chance to do anything. They didn't ask them about it. They didn't see that their role was not to be oppositional to authorities. It was actually to inform and give them a chance. And when the government was aware of it, then they did come and they did things. And I said, you got to report the positive things as well. So I mean, that balance, the fact that we have to invite those that we are maybe most intimidated by to participate in the discussion. There is a lot of interesting discussion happening on this subject in this country, on press laws. But again, I think the key here is really keep your stories local, keep your success stories local, keep your profiles of business of entrepreneurs who have started things that are new. Tell those stories. This is you will be able to contribute to a larger, freer, more open coverage if you are. If you're looking at the smaller stories, they resonate in a big way. But I do know that frustration and fear can never really be our most compelling motivation. Is there another comment? Yes.
Thank you. I do have a question rather than a comment. The question. My name is Dina. I am an international fellow that was based at Arizona State University for the last year, and I've just come back about a week ago. I have a question about the relevance of being local. from the perspective of global brands. Relevance of being local from the global perspective, from the perspective of global brands. So you mentioned the special reports, and thank you for that very interesting example. But then what other strategies do global brands take so that to be locally relevant? Is that being more present, having more presence in the regions, collaborating more with local journalists, with local projects? I think it's very, very relevant nowadays, especially when they are challenged by new initiatives, new startups across the world, and do face some competition.
Thank you for that question. One thing that I do is I've been working with some NGOs that have been producing great content, but on larger issues. And I've created partnerships and exchanges and barter with international media, so that that content they're creating is being published in. I use commercial spaces, but we run texts and articles that are totally credible pieces of journalism that can't get published in these venues otherwise. So we do a kind of an exchange, a barter. Your idea about how to use, I think, inviting local journalists to be guest columnists and to contribute in your brand is where? Where is your brand?
I'm a fellow, funded by the Humphrey Fellowship Program.
Oh, okay.
I'm not yet in journalism.
Okay.
I just wonder what kind of strategies do they take? I mean, do they think about collaboration more, being more present in the region?
Well, yeah, okay. So, I was thinking more from the point of view of regional media. How does regional media get globally relevant, important access to content that you can't afford to get here? No major international global media outlet in the world is really thinking actively about the Kazakh market, so that when you see I actually had forgot to use my slides, but when you see an interview in the weekend edition of the FT with a thought leader, a musician, a designer, a scientist, a business leader, I've been helping Kazakh media outlets reach out and say, and obtain the Kazakh rights, the Kazakh language rights, the Russian language rights for Kazakhstan. So there's all sorts of access to content globally available that could be used and published in the local language in the local country. Now, if you were if your media outlet here was running an interview with, and I like to ask young people, who's on their wish list? Who would you love to incorporate into your publication or on your radio station? Then you could say, what local commercial outlets, what companies, what sponsors here would like to be associated with with that piece of content, with that, and it could be everything from an interview with Michelle Obama to a songwriter. So. The ways of creating more dialogue and exchange between global brands, and local brands, I think, is nearly endless. You need to be looking at your own media product with a local filter. How can that? What can I do that helps me create better, more engaging content for my readers and my listeners and my audiences? Someone else? So this is a painting that by a guy named Chris in Cameroon, and we were doing some media training in Cameroon, and I was with the owners of all the newspapers from Cameroon, and we took a break, and they were all complaining. We don't have the revenue to buy cartoons, to buy images, to buy. And I walked out into the lobby of the hotel where this little meeting was taking place, and I saw a painting by this. I saw this painting. Actually, it was a variation of it. Never ever give up. And we see the stork is swallowing the frog, but the frog is choking the stork. And it's interesting to hear this. Do you identify with the stork, or do you identify with the frog? So I walk outward, have a coffee, and I say to who's painting this? This is a local painter. His name is Asawi. So I see the phone number there. I make in the coffee break. I make the call. Chris lives 10 minutes away. He comes over, and he says, "Yeah, I made this. I'm a local painter." "Oh, how are you doing, Chris? Are you making any? Are you selling anything?" "No, I haven't sold anything in 3 months." "You're kidding. You're so talented." Okay, so I say, "I have an idea. Come in, meet the newspaper owners. You guys say you can't afford to publish cartoons. Chris, can you do political cartoons, social cartoons? Can you?" "Yeah, I've done. I have lots of them. I can do them." "How much do you charge for a cartoon?" That went back to my other image of how long is a piece of string. "You haven't sold anything in 3 months. You're happy to have one of your drawings in a leading newspaper this week?" "Yes." "Okay. How much do you usually get?" 10,000 CFA. "Would you take 5,000 for the first one?" "Yes." "You're the owners of the newspapers. Would you pay 5,000 CFA to have an original piece of artwork from a local artist in your newspaper?" "Yes, we could." "Okay, Chris, when can you start?" "I'm ready right now." "When can you give him an advance so he can get some lunch and go make your drawing?" "Yes, we can do that right now." So it happened, and then he ended up becoming an important and published artist in Cameroon. The idea was just sitting there on the wall, and they got local original art they thought they couldn't pay for. He got a job. There is so much talent. You just have to. We have so much talent within miles of us, within 100 meters of where we're sitting, and yet we're not connecting that talent with what we are trying to do. We're thinking maybe too large. Maybe we're stopped by the obstacles, and we're not thinking about how to connect people and needs. That we looked at. Yeah, when I read a newspaper, anything, I pick up everything I'm looking. How do I localize it? Well, how is that good for? Let's say if I'm in Kazakhstan. Okay, here was an interview with the artistic director from Louis Vuitton. Is that article available here in Russian or in Kazakh or in your countries? Probably not. Just ask for it. What is the biggest advertiser for on CNN? Who is the largest the largest advertiser on CNN? What do you think? Who is the biggest advertiser on CNN? Pharmaceutical company. No, the biggest advertiser on CNN is CNN. They are constantly promoting their own content, their own products, and I read the ads. I read ads everywhere. I read content. I pick up things wherever I go. I'm always looking for angles and opportunities for what I'm trying to advance. Here, the FT has run an ad for Harvard Business School doing online courses. Disruptive strategy with Clayton Christensen. Really interesting, fantastic person, amazing movement about disruption. Who is thinking about this content in this market? Nobody. You have to be. Reach out. I bet you could obtain the content for disruptive strategy for Russian in Russian language or your other national languages for nothing. Back in the old days, I had to figure out how to keep my literary journal going. I approached Delta Airlines when they opened up their flight between Atlanta and Paris, and I coined the expression "poetry in flight." I went to see the director. I used their signature. Delta gets you there, and I made it easy. Here's the contract. And I'm going to give you copies to put on your business class in your business class seats. The one selling one ad, I created the ad for them. One ad paid for the entire printing bill of that issue. That got me thinking. I started writing letters all over the place. Here's an article in last week's FT about a China girl band tunes in to startup funding model. And I'm reading the small print here. Last month, the group's backers raised more than $150 million from investors eager to tap into a popularity that saw it sell 2 million albums in China. These are young girls. Look at the musical talent. The musical talent in Kazakhstan is absolutely incredible. The musical talent in your countries, I'm sure, of unknown musicians is incredible. Think differently. How do we promote? How do we write stories about unknown people? How do we connect them with business people? How do we do special events? How do we do special projects? It's all there. Same thing. Here's this is a house ad for on the subject of how to buy a luxury watch. That means there's a lot of people who buy luxury watches. There's lots of jewelry shops and brands here right around us. But Wempe, the jeweler, has teamed up with the FT to do the event. Then the event gets promoted in the paper. That helps the advertisers and the sponsors, and it's all and our journalists are connecting with industry leaders. Whatever your subjects are, I can't tell you what you should be promoting, but you do. You know. Same thing here. This is an ad for Mishkan de Rea, which has supported content on how to see London. The Gates Foundation spends £3 million. The Gates Foundation spends £3 million each year on supporting the Guardian's column on development issues. So they have nothing to say about the content, but they're supporting the area, the space, so that the paper has the resources to write about development. That may be another solution, is to reach out to others who would like to help, and that may relate as well to what you were asking. Create events, create your own conferences around your own specifically pertinent and relevant subjects. Here, UBS supported an FT video series on the future of money. Was that the FT's idea? Was that UBS's idea? That was somebody's idea. Everything that you see around you was somebody's idea. If you're not having those ideas, you need to have more of those ideas. And if that's not your job to come up with those ideas, you should be looking for the most creative person you can come up with to do nothing but come up with ideas. If you have the ideas but you can't implement them, then you should be hiring the person, the person that does the tools. So you can't be controlled or limited by the fact that you're not a technocrat, you're an idea person. So you hire those people. You don't have the money to hire those people, you figure out another idea for how to pay them. Maybe you get somebody else that helps sponsor that position, and that position is paid for by them, so those ideas can come back to you, or that implementation comes back to you to implement your ideas. Do not spend cash when you can spend ideas. Do not spend cash when you can trade for things that of equal value. Everybody wins. We used to say win-win. Now we need win-win-win-win-win. There's going to be at least 4 wins in the. This is just an old story when I got, you know, when you get junk mail in the mail, and the marketing director of a company sends you a letter about a new product, and everybody throws them out, and nobody pays any attention. I pay attention. I read the guy's letter, and it was a guy named Philip Blomel, marketing director for Ralph Lauren. He sends out a letter. It's in everybody's mailbox, 3 million letters, and I call him up. Can I speak with Philip Blomel? I have his name. It's on the letter. It's signed. It's automatically signed, you know. And what's it concern? It concerns a new idea about putting together concerning a new publication. I was publishing a directory called Paris Anglophone. I got Philip Blomel on the phone. I said, I have an idea. I read your letter. I thank you for writing to me. And it turned out to be a $25,000 ad sale. Publish books. Publish your own books. This is an 18-page book. It's a pamphlet. 18 pages. C'est tout. Written by, he's now deceased, Stéphane Hessel. Indignez-vous. It's about speaking up. It's responded in France to a need for political voice. It's only 18 pages. Its content excited people. It sold 3 million copies at €3 each. That's all. Everybody said, no, books have to be longer, books have to be more expensive. Try it. Come up with your own books. I published a book this year. I published a book this year on the rise of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president of Liberia, the first and only elected woman president of an African country. The book has now been, she won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2011. The book has now been optioned for film. So use your books as your calling card. Use books as a means of getting your authors onto the radio or onto webinars or onto television. So your books don't have to make money. They become absolute wonderful vehicles for promotion and visibility. I'm almost. Yeah, that was another one I did. And after I did the one with Delta, I wrote to France Telecom. I came up with my own design, my own concept, Call Me, using the word call with the phone company. And I used the line from Moby Dick, and I added a comma after me. So it says, call me, Ishmael. They said, well, we've never done anything like that, but that shows that we are creative and we're literary and we're cultural. They bought the back cover for three issues. That's Bill McDonough. If you don't know him, William McDonough, I suggest you Google him. William McDonough wrote a book called Cradle to Cradle. He's an architect, a designer, and a thought leader. He's changing industry across the world. This is the CEO of Shaw Carpets. Shaw Carpets belongs to Warren Buffett. Bill McDonough came up with design. He said, this is industrial carpet we're standing on. This is a pollutant. 4,000 chemicals are in this carpeting. When at the end of this carpeting's life, which hopefully will be a long time from now, because this building is brand new, this will become pollution. Where will this go? We don't know where this will go, but this is going to go into a landfill somewhere. So he designed one of his ideas. He designed industrial carpet that is a nutrient. At the end of its life, it gets chopped up and it becomes fertilizer. It goes back into the land. It's part of the circular economy. His book, Cradle to Cradle, is revolutionary. It's changing the way people are thinking all over the world. If his books are not available in your markets, or you want to talk to, obtain the rights for your countries, reach out. You can do an interview with him. You can. There's local applications of his ideas right in your neighborhoods, in your cities. Start a new rubric on the circular economy. More and more young people care. More and more people care in general, but more and more young people care about how we're preserving the economy, conserving our planet. And he got Shaw Carpet, which is you would never think would be interested in that kind of approach, to become a partner. That's an example of the carpet. It looks like this one, except this one you can eat. People today care about purpose beyond products. If your media products are not driven by, or do not have enough content in it that reflects a world that we want to live in, you're not going to survive. There's a book that's recently come out that I love talking about, that the CEO of Starwood Hotels wrote, and he says, if you're young and you're in media or in other fields, make sure you're not working for a carcass company. What is a carcass company? A carcass company is one that is dying. It's already dead, or it's dying, because it doesn't embrace some of the newer ideas about what is important. Who are we? What do we care about? What content? And so Bill McDonough's larger idea is we can wage peace through commerce. And so the things that you do actually you can create ways of making money, but at the same time you're advancing a better planet. The interesting, at the Sustainable Brands Conference in Detroit, the interesting thing, and I took this slide to bring here, is that global surveys show that people everywhere in the world today want the same thing. In Asia, the statistics of this was health and well-being, 33%, financial security, 31%, sense of purpose, 19%, meaningful relationships, 17%. It's funny because I was talking to some people in Almaty, and I was speaking to some young women who said, our parents are always asking when we're getting married. When are you getting married? When are you getting married? So I know in this culture there's a tremendous respect for the elderly and your parents. That's the most important thing. So where are the special supplements? Where are the special magazines? Where are the radio shows on called When Are You Getting Married? Now there are lots of and then have used content. Where there's so much available content. You don't have to be an expert to answer the question. When are you getting married? What are the pressures that I feel from my parents? How do I become it? How do I be a modern person, a contemporary person? At the same time, I'm respectful to tradition. This interplay between tradition and forward-thinking modern life is a really interesting one in this region. I think, yeah. So this is a horse burger, a black burger. I thought, there's a lot of excellent cuisine in the region. There could be lots more interesting media products that has to do with cuisine and cooking. I know there are some shows, but call one Black Burgers and invite chefs from here and from around the world to talk about their secrets. I mean, you remember, you need bad ideas to get to the good one. This may be one of the bad ones. Any case, this is the future of your markets here. This is Igor, and he's in this shop in Almaty. That's his mom. She owns the store. She has three things happening in this store. She's selling homemade ice cream. She's selling she has a florist shop, and they have a book shop and a vinyl, and they're selling vinyl records. When you're thinking about your markets, your readers, your listeners, your viewers, your audiences, think about Igor. And one last thing about vinyl. Who thought that vinyl was coming back? Vinyl is coming back, and in a big way. Paper is not dead. Newspapers are, there's a reason why Warren Buffett owns so many newspapers in America. Local newspapers are vibrant, and they're a place for local businesses as well to communicate with consumers. Remember, we buy things one at a time. We have one conversation at a time. We live in the world one day at a time. So that's Igor. And this I took in my hotel the other morning, and I thought, yes, this is what we need to be thinking about. I don't know how old this girl is, but she seemed to be pretty engaged. There's lots of engagement there with her smartphone. She can't drink coffee yet, but she knew what she was doing. And if we're not aiming to think about the world that she's living in and the one that she's going to be an active participant in, we're going to miss the boat. I think that's the end of my slides. I think I'll stop there. I have lots of things. I'm not a very linear thinking person. I think this way, which makes communicating somewhat in a coherent, direct, vertical manner somewhat of a challenge, because I put people together and I put ideas together, and I would love to connect with some of you and connect and figure out if there's some synergies that can happen over the next few days that changes, that when you go home, you're not going to be quite the same. Thank you. I'll stop with that.